I've coached some that have been really successful in it and some that maybe kind of struggle a little bit. And I think it comes down to the ability to take action, even when you don't think you're ready, even when you don't have the full plan in front of you. I think entrepreneurship is like ready, fire, aim. And in corporate America was like ready, aim, fire. Like everything's perfect, everything is in line before you do it. That's not what it's like in entrepreneurship. So the ability to take a step forward and to do the next thing, even when you're scared, even when there's fear, even when you don't really know, that's what really separates someone in this program or in entrepreneurship in general.
Welcome back to Fast Foundations, the podcast. It's your girl, Jess Bergio, with one of our other fellow coaches. Kyle, how are you today?
I'm good, Jess. How are you? It's good to be here.
I know, I'm awesome. We were just geeking out that we get to be coaches again in this round for Fast Foundations, the mastermind, with our two new fearless leaders, RT Custer and Jim. Jim and I were in the very, very first round back in 2019. And then I think you came into Fast Foundations, the mastermind, the second round. So we just missed each other.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I remember distinctly where I was when I saw Chris Harder, the first start of the, what do we call him? We call him the originator of the program, talking about this early stage entrepreneur mastermind. And I remember it being like, oh shit, I have to do this because everything he's saying resonates with me, especially the term accidental entrepreneur. That one was the one that got me. Was there a moment that you heard or saw this program or him talking about it that got you to be like, I need that. I absolutely need to be in that group?
Well, I think there's two things. One, I've personally known Chris and Lori for a long time, like 12, 13 years. They came to our wedding over 9 years ago. So I knew him really well. And so there was an inherent kind of built-in trust where I knew what Chris was all about. I've watched his journey. I've been along to, view it from a distance. So I think that was the first thing. But the second thing was I knew because I transitioned from corporate America. I then took the ultimate stay-at-home, kind of to speed things up. I took a stay-at-home a promotion to stay-at-home dad, the best promotion that there is out there. And then I had this idea. I'm like, well, where am I going to get the support? Where can I get the learning? Like, who can help me get there? And I just knew that getting into a room or getting into a mastermind was kind of the hack and the shortcut to speed up the process. Because coming from corporate America, my network, my friends, my circle of influence, they were all corporate America people. So I'm like, where do these people hang out that are doing this entrepreneurship thing? Because I need to learn from them. So I just knew that investing in myself through a mastermind was a way to do that.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I had heard of them many times before. I was a big fan of Lori Harder over the years with our fitness backgrounds. And I saw her in Gabby Bernstein's and Jack Canfield's and all these really like high level ones. And that made sense for where she was at in her business. I remember them being upwards of $25,000, $50,000 to invest. And that's really the only people I thought were involved in masterminds. I didn't realize that they actually made them more low ticket for early stage people. And I remember Chris talking about his high level one and thinking, I sure wish he'd make one for us newbies who, like me, you were in corporate, but my background was in the beauty industry and I'd been brick and mortar, real guerrilla marketing back then. You actually went out and got clients, like you talked to people. So like this whole online world was so new to me that there was no way I was going to go do a 5-year stint in college to learn how to turn my computer on and market people on social media. Then he came out with this and I was like, this feels like a streamlined fire hose version of all the things that are working for them now that I could learn and implement in this new business that I'm trying to do.
Yeah. 100%. It is a fire hose of information, but that's why it's important to, number one, have a coach that's there, like you're doing, like I'm doing, like the others are doing, to help you stay accountable to doing something and not getting too distracted, because I think it's really easy to get distracted. So what I love about this program and this mastermind is you have support through the coaches and you have support through other people in there as well. And so I think that's what really separates it from so many others is the addition. Because when I went through it right after you, that was the first round of coaches. And I was like, oh, this is so helpful to have someone actually kind of walk with me and hold my hand through this process and keep me accountable to action and taking action. So I think I love it. They've done a great job. And RT and Jim, I've known them for a couple of years now as well. And they're taking it to another level. So I'm really excited about it.
I know, me too. And I think that's such a key part is like keeping people accountable, making sure that like courses and programs can get overwhelming, right? Because we still have life. We still have to do life. You probably have a business you're running or
Yep.
trying to start or run or multiple things and children and all the things. And it can get very, overwhelming to stay on task and stay focused. Like you said, it's so easy to get distracted. So easy, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're kind of starting to make your own schedule. And sometimes you maybe don't know exactly what you should be working on in your business. So therefore you just deflect and you don't do the things you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that 100%. And I think, majority of entrepreneurs probably are, but the ones that can stay the most focused and really start to like pick up momentum are the ones we've seen have the most success, right? Because you've had a history now of coaching. What would you say the number one differentiator is on those who step into the program and have success and those who step into the program and maybe leave not where they wanted to be?
I think there's a few things. Number one, I think defining what a success would be like for you inside the program is really important. So there's going to be people who are stepping into the program who maybe have an idea, but maybe haven't taken too much action on it. Maybe there are some that are a couple years into the business and it's generating some revenue. And then there are some that's generating a good amount of revenue and they're working on profitability. So everyone's coming into it from just a different part on the journey. And so defining what would be a win for that person, I think is really important. And then I think the second thing is really just taking action. I mean, you're going to get so many different ideas. And I think you can attest to this. I can as well. I went into it. I was like, oh my gosh, Jess is doing ClickFunnels. Now I need to do ClickFunnels and so is doing this. And now I got to do this. So I think the ability to stay focused, but also keep an open mind, I think is really important. And that's a really difficult dance. And that's why, again, I think a coach is really important to help you. But I think those two things, but especially just taking action. I've coached some that have been really successful in it and some that maybe kind of struggle a little bit. And I think it comes down to the ability to take action, even when you don't think you're ready, even when you don't have the full plan in front of you. I think entrepreneurship is like ready, fire, aim. And a corporate America was like ready, aim, fire. Like everything's perfect. Everything is in line before you do it. That's not what it's like in entrepreneurship. So the ability to take a step forward and to do the next thing, even when you're scared, even when there's fear, even when you don't really know, that's what really separates someone in this program or in entrepreneurship in general.
Ain't that the truth? That's so, so true. And it's interesting, right? I've learned so much about people in the process of being a coach, in the process of being part of the mastermind, kind of watching what everyone's doing around you. And that bit of comparison too, of like how you were talking about
Mm.
Jess with the ClickFunnels and this person's doing that. And it's easy
Yeah.
to get overwhelmed and think you need to do all the things.
Yep.
And that's the cool thing though, you kind of get to discover though in this time when you do commit to these 6 months of the mastermind is you give yourself the space to kind of discover who you are, what you're meant to be doing, maybe even your message. A lot of people come in with one idea and leave with a different one, right? They start one business and they leave with another. Can you walk us through what you walked into the mastermind with and kind of what you ended up leaving with?
Yes. So I had an idea when I started it, and so my background is corporate America, as I mentioned. Then I became a high school business teacher, then stay at home dad. So that's kind of the frame that I was in. And I was just stepping into entrepreneurship with this idea, and this idea was that I think a lot of people would rather learn, grow, connect while going on an adventure than sit in a large hotel conference room. So that's kind of just my own belief because I would go to all the conferences with hundreds or thousands of people. I would sit in the back of the conference room and I would sneak out in the afternoon and go surfing, go hiking, go golf, do something fun and move my body. I was like, well, maybe there's other people like me. So I went into the first Fast Foundations with this idea that I'm going to create a smaller experience for people and highly curate it. There's no hotel conference room. We're going to use the great outdoors as our conference room. I don't really have, a PowerPoint presentation to teach. We're just going to learn by doing something together, experiential learning. And so I held my first experience while inside of Fast Foundations. And the strange thing was that all guys showed up to my first trip, and I never marketed it to be just for guys. But what was really obvious to me was, wow, I don't think guys have a really good space or a container to talk about things that are happening in life, whether it's work or personal or whatever. And so I did another one and I marketed that one just for guys. And that's where I kind of took this idea, it started to take shape, and I started to move towards what is now called Guys Trip because I was just focused on doing the next thing and doing it really, really well. And just knowing that the further I walked down the path, the more that would be revealed to me and the more I could figure it out. But I had to keep moving. It's like riding a bicycle, and the bicycle, you can course correct it if the bicycle's moving. But if you try and like move the bike, like I've got a 5-year-old, I think you've got a young one too. So I've got a 5-year-old. And if he's riding a bike, like he's just going to fall down if he tries to steer it. Like you got to get the bike moving, and then we can course correct. So I think that was one of the big things that I learned. Learned a lot of things as it relates to marketing. I launched a podcast, ended up writing a book, and so that's in a you know all that launched because of Fast Foundations. The business getting really crystal clear on who it's for, the story branding of it, the podcast, how to do a podcast, how to launch all those things, and then writing a book. So there's so much. I had none of that when I came into Fast Foundations, and this was, I don't even, was it 2019 or something like that?
Mhm.
So it's wild what you can, and that's, I think, important to know, is that you're going to learn some things and you're going to put on the shelf and say, when I need this, I'm going to come back to it, because you may not need it now. But I learned so many things that I still go back through my notebook, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, now it's time to take this off the shelf and implement. So I think that's really important to mention as well.
I do too. Yeah. And I think I sometimes tend to forget about that because man, those first 5 months and those couple of in-persons that were part of the very first round, like it did, and Lori did preface it. She's like, this will feel like you're getting fire hose a bunch of information. And it was all I could do to take the notes to hopefully think that I'll need this one day down the road. And
Yeah.
that's a really cool thing though, because that's what I signed up for. I was like, I want all as much information as I can get in a short amount of time. That's why I'm paying this much versus going to college, like I mentioned earlier, or even just getting one singular mentor. I learned in the beauty industry, having multiple mentors or multiple people that you could learn from, which is like a mastermind, that
Mhm.
your odds of succeeding are better because you have
Yep.
the lens of so many other people. And that's something that corporate can sometimes do. Is a lot of corporate businesses look at outside businesses. How are they being successful? How are they marketing? How are they being, strategic? But in the beauty industry, we didn't really have that. It was kind of like, this is how it's always been done. This is what we do, head down, da 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 da. So
Mhm.
when I put myself in that room and I was around people who were nowhere near beauty entrepreneurs, I was like, wow, let me see your perspective. Let me hear your take on it. How do you think I should be marketing this?
Yeah.
And I love that you fell into the fact that like all men resonated with what you were putting out there. And so that helped your client avatar, like
Yeah.
figuring out who this was for, and then getting even more granular, like who really is this for, so that you could really speak to them when you show up and talk about it on social media.
Mhm.
That evolution, that piece alone is like worth every single penny of being in that group, because
Yeah.
clarity is what helps you sell. Clarity is what helps you get your messaging across in like a quick short amount of time versus like rambling on, well, I do kind of this and this is what we do. Like that part is so important that a lot of people like want to skip over that, or they want to just be like, oh, I want to be for everybody, or I want to speak to all the things. And that's not a really great marketing ploy unless you're Oprah. Oprah can now speak and talk about anything she wants, right? Because she's Oprah. But
Yeah.
when you're just starting out and you're not quite Oprah yet, you got to have something that people know you for, they trust you for, they like you, and they want to hang out with you for. So I'm curious, because I know you wrote the book and I know you started your podcast. So I too started the podcast when we were like shortly after ending my first round. Creating community is something that I think a lot of people want to skip over. They want to go straight into this entrepreneurship, personal brand thing. They want to sell a thing, but they don't have an audience yet. How has starting a podcast helped you create community?
Well, I think you can rally behind a central message, theme, thing, whatever it might be. It gives you the ability for people to come together over something. You get to pick what that something is. What do you believe in? It also then builds a little bit of credibility. It builds some authority within that space. And then, obviously, we're overlooking the obvious. You get to add value to a lot of people, right? So that's assumed. And then I think the really cool part is your network can explode, because you get to sit down for, 45 minutes to an hour, whatever it is. And you get the permission slip to ask all the great questions that you'd always wanted to ask. You just skip over things like, how's the weather? How are your kids? How's summer going? You could just get right to the cool stuff. And so you get to explode your network. And for me personally, I can tell you so many stories from people that I've had on as guests who I ended up collaborating with. We've done some pitting of NASCARs with one of NASCAR's best pit crew teams because I had them on my podcast. They became like my best friends. I've met so many really cool people, and then from there, someone on your podcast as a guest always has a message that resonates with at least one person, and it really can change their life. And so when you connect an idea or a thought or a takeaway to someone who has a problem that needs to be solved, and you can connect those. Gosh, it's such a beautiful thing. And so I really think everyone can podcast. I think everyone should podcast. Everyone should create a community, and rally people behind something, because there's so much amazing and beautiful things that come from it that it's really hard to put words together. And I'm sure you realize it. Well, just as of today, I released episode 200. So I've been doing it for a little bit over 2 years. And I tell you, it's so much fun. Sometimes you're like, oh, I got to do some of these small little tasks and all that stuff. But you're like, it's adding value to so many people, and it fills me up so much. I just enjoy it. I love it. I'll do it for my wife's like, are you going to do something to celebrate 200? I was like, I don't know. Cause I kind of just want to keep doing it. I want to get to 500, then I want to get to 1,000. And so I really enjoy it. I think, especially those who are getting into entrepreneurship, I think having a podcast is a great idea.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. I was a little leery to start a podcast because it's not something that you just stop, right? You don't just, it's
Yep.
not like a course or a program that you launch, you put out there, you do the thing, then you just stop. I mean, you can do seasons, you can run your podcast however you want, but
Yeah.
the ones that are the most consistent, who are consistently putting out episodes a couple times a week, like those are the ones that have a lot of traction, see the most downloads, have the bigger impact. So I was very like, ooh, committing to something forever and ever. Like I threw myself a party at 100 episodes, literally like a real in life person party,
Yeah.
because I was like, you made it to 100, it's all the way up now. Like there's no stopping you. And I too fell in love with it. And it is something that, you have that hall pass to like ask those questions. And you're exactly right. Like you skip over the pleasantries, you say hi when you get on, and then you get to the meat of it. And it's such an empowering thing because you're inviting people in, they're letting you in, you get to ask all the questions. And I think, do you feel like the mastermind kind of gave you that permission to like start something as big as a podcast and to just like figure it out and ask the questions and say, hey, I mean, this is the way that I'm going to be able to get in, build my network, and then also add value?
Yes, the short answer is you have all the support and you have all the resources. So I think when I had started my podcast through Fast Foundations, there was, I don't know, at least a handful, maybe a dozen of others that had a podcast. So all of a sudden I go from truly knowing zero people that I could ask for help, to all of a sudden having 6 to 10 to 12 people where I could say, hey, I need some help with something. And they'd be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll help you out. So I think support and resources is really important in anything. I mean, even I remember in Fast Foundations, after I had my first trip, that I put on a second trip. And what was really important is that second trip that I put on, no one showed up to. Like I didn't have a single person book it. And so I got the beauty of having that experience while in the support of a mastermind. So could you imagine like failing in that regard with a support of 40 other people who are willing to pick you up? Like it feels so good. And if you weren't in a mastermind, if you weren't intentionally trying to build community or somehow networking with other people in some way, who knows? I might have just stopped and said, forget it. Like I'm not doing it anymore. I don't have any support. So I think through being in the mastermind, through feeling the support of a community of people that want to rally behind you, boy, failure doesn't really feel like failure. It just feels like it's the stepping stone that I can go through. I feel good about it. Let's learn from it, and then let's keep moving on. And so I honestly don't know what would have happened if I was not in the mastermind when I failed on that trip that I put out there. So that's just another, I think, like, hey, you got to be in some sort of circle, some sort of mastermind, something for support alone on top of everything else.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because I feel like not a lot of people talk about the launch that nobody bought anything from, or
Oh
the
yeah.
fact that they went ghost when they actually put stuff out there. I see that happen a lot with people. It's like, I put it out there once, nobody bought it. It's
Hmm.
like, or, you launch something and only 2 people sign up and you were really hoping to have like a 25-person event. So,
Yep.
I think those are the stories that aren't shared enough. And those are the stories that often, like you said, allow people to like give up. They're like, they tried it once, it didn't work out. It's like posting once on Instagram and hoping you go viral. Like it's kind of the same thing. But when you're in community with people that are like, I've had silent launches too, meaning no one bought my shit.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, so this is normal. Oh, this doesn't sting as bad now that I know that it's normal-ish. And then having people who are all on board, who want to like help you figure out how to do it better next time, and they're willing to like, you know, market for you and show up for you and leave reviews for you and like help you brainstorm. Oh, so good. Like it's all the good feels. And I think anyone who, I hate to use the word drink the Kool-Aid, but it kind of feels like the mastermind community of people who have been through these kind of things just know. It's like this underlying thing where we don't really have to talk about it. You know what you're investing in because we've all decided to put some skin in the game that so that we have a place to ask questions and
Yep.
feel safe. And when you are in the room like that, you kind of look to the person your right and left and in front of you, and you know that you're in the right company. I noticed though, for a lot of people, they feel like maybe they don't have as much value to bring when they step into those rooms. Did you notice that a little bit too in the beginning?
100%, because
Yeah,
I mean, at that time I didn't really have a business.
same.
So to me, it's like, well, I don't know what it's like to do this, but you know what? I can listen. Yeah, I can hear it, because honestly, as you know, Chess, sometimes talk therapy just is real. It's good. It's helpful. And if you just can listen to someone, and maybe there's not much that you can do in terms of helping them with a strategy or a plan or tactics or whatever it might be, but gosh, you can listen. And so you should never feel undervalued or like you can't bring anything to the table to help, because you always can.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And I think that's a beautiful thing about if that's just something innately in you, if you like to listen and you are somebody who cares, like there is a place for you to have a podcast, to have a voice, to have a program, to have a course. Like that's the secret sauce is your ability to connect. And sometimes all you need is a room of other people to see your magic so that they can pull out the greatness that's in you. And again, that's why like I'm gonna keep drinking the Kool-Aid and why I like strong arm my way into like co-hosting this podcast because I'm like, I want to pull back the curtain so people can see that it's all possible for them too. I mean,
Yeah.
if you go back to your story, I mean, you have an amazing podcast where you share so much more in depth of like your personal story and how you've done all these amazing, crazy things, like getting out of hundreds of $1,000s of debt once you decided that was what you were gonna do, to being like all the things you've been in your business, to where you are now creating these epic trips for men. And I just think like it's one of those things where, you look back and you realize like, if I hadn't said yes to myself at that time, what would it be like?
Mm, mm.
Can you even paint that picture?
Yeah, it's a hard one. I mean, it's such a good question, because I've just taken, one step in front of the other now for several years. And I was never, I think vision is obviously really important. You have to have vision for where you want to go, but you don't have to know the whole thing. And
Right.
you have to be willing to be flexible. And so, honestly, I think at some point I would have invested in myself some way, somehow, because this has been like a tug on my heart for a long time, to just take people on adventures and have amazing, meaningful conversations. And I never knew how I would do that. I actually wrote the Travel Channel in 2008 with this idea. 2008.
Really?
And yeah, yeah. And I didn't actually act on this until, 2019, when I said yes to the Fast Foundations Mastermind and jumped in and really went after it. So I think for me, maybe I'm a little bit different. I think I probably would have eventually gone after this, but I'm glad I said yes when I did, with who I did, because it was absolutely what I needed. And maybe I
Mm.
just inherently kind of felt and knew that. So I did it. It was scary for sure, to invest that much in yourself when you've got zero revenue coming in. But I think it was the right group, the right people, the right time.
Yeah, agreed. For anybody who's on the fence, wondering if joining a mastermind is something that they need to do in order to like get started or make some momentum in their business, what would you say to somebody who's like listening to this podcast? They've stumbled upon it. They're like, "Oh, we love Jess and Kyle. Like, what they're talking about feels so good, but I just don't know if this is the right next step for me."
Well, I think we got to be honest, and it might not be. It might not be for everyone, and I
Yeah.
think that's okay. But if you're willing to bet on yourself, if you're willing to say, "Hey, I don't have all the answers. I want to get around people who want to cheer me on. They want to support me. They want to encourage me. They want to help me, perhaps with some resources or connections or whatever it might be." I do think that masterminds are kind of like the shortcut. They're kind of like the hack to get to where you want to go faster. And so you can do this on your own. I do think it'll take you longer. I do think it'll cost you much more in the long run anyway. And maybe it could help you, skip some of the heartaches, the failures, and the loss of revenue and profit and all those things. but it is an investment. It is a bet on yourself. And if you're going to do it, you've got to show up and you've got to take the initiative and you've got to reach out to people and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can anyone help me? Or, hey, who can I help right now? So if you're the type of person who's like, I'm going to take initiative, I'm going to bet on myself, this very well could be the right thing for you.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah, and you guys can check out more information at fastfoundations.com. And this podcast will be a resource for you to tune in as to what we're doing, giving you tools, strategies, just insight as to what's working for people in the group and what we're seeing on trend and all of the good that goes on inside of these groups. But I'm so grateful that the live in-person portions are back, because as much as I love being virtual and being able to like open my laptop from wherever to tune in, there's nothing like the power of being in that room.
Yeah.
And seeing like the magic that happens, the conversations that happen at the snack table or during lunch, or when we get to do breakout sessions, or when we have those guest speakers come in and say that one sentence that somebody needed to hear in order to like get the fuck out of their own way and take action and create the thing. And, you know, and to sit next to someone who sees greatness in you and tells you like, hey, you know, you really should be a storytelling coach. As what happened to Alex Street. That's like one of my favorite stories, that someone saw something in him and they spoke up and they said it to him.
Yep.
And it's changed his entire trajectory of his business. And you going from working in corporate to being a teacher, to being a stay-at-home dad, to getting out of all of that debt, and then creating these epic like retreats for men where you were like, I can't be the only person who would rather learn like this. Like you took a dream, you created a vision, and then you brought it to life. And now you get to live in your purpose and your passion, and other people get to experience that and bond and get things that they didn't even know they needed. So it's like, where can you find yourself in all of this secret sauceness, if you will? And don't wait too long. Like join before you're ready, and you know, say yes to opportunities if it's something that you can make happen, because both Kyle and I wouldn't be where we are now if it wasn't for this amazing group. So we invite you to join us. If you're a projector like me and you need an invitation, this is your invitation. And we can't wait to serve you.
You know, I'm so glad they're doing in person too, because I had such a powerful moment inside one of the Fast Foundations in person years back. And my coach was there, Brooks, if you remember Brooks. And I plan to go to the Fast Foundations in-person session in Scottsdale, Arizona, the one that's coming up. So I'll be there too, because I think you're right. The energy in person is really powerful. And one of my gifts is discernment. And when you can see someone and feel someone's energy, people are like that too. And sometimes it just feels so good to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be recognized, and to do the same for someone else in their presence, in their space. It's just such a beautiful thing. And everyone inside this organization and this mastermind is doing a great job facilitating that and bringing it out. So it's so cool. And if you're going to go, I'll see you there in Arizona.
Oh my God, we will both see you there. We can't wait. And yes, the next round of Fast Foundations, the mastermind, is launching in September. We are in mid-August recording this, but we, again, are inviting you. It is a 6-month-long program. And we just can't wait to serve you and see you inside. And we'll see you on the next episode. Bye, everyone.